pull up, the block spinning. New ride and my girlfriends match the presidential inside. Ray-Bans on my eyes. Weed and brews in charge. I don't know why they still be looking surprised. Add fuel to my fire, take it higher than they ever seen. My life a movie and I'm living out the best scenes. They call me cocky, in reality I'm confident. And every night we taking shots to our accomplishments. Cheers. A lot of food, put it on my plate. And baby pressing out to tell her to wait. She seen the signs of the times and the world is so boring. I'd rather pull out the old schools and new foreigns. Tell me what you want, I'll tell you what you need. Them other niggas stuck, Bruce took the lead. I'm teaching on them streets that I used to run. And afterwards chillin' with my Aki on. What's up? Jake's claiming that they own. And they crew is legit. I see the things that they doing when they do it, but they don't do it like this. Not at all. Niggas say that they the bomb, and they really be lit. I see the things that they doing when they do it, but they don't do it like this. Straight game, money over fame. Put it in accounts, double the amount on some Oprah shit. On occasion we be toasting, and what I'm sipping now the same color as the ocean is. Ride slow with the beat up, sister got her feet up. Head wrap with a skirt on when we meet up. It's really a play, my vibe reading South Central LA. And yeah, we got it cracking from the streets to the bay. All praises to Yahweh when I kneel and I pray, knowing it's all good. I teach truth and spread light in the hood, doing exactly what we want, they only do what they could. Common sense is genius dressed in his working clothes. It's like I work and work more, y'all just working clothes. A lot of bad attitudes and some broken souls. The city of fallen angels, guess that's how it goes. Damn. Jake's claiming that they own. And they crew is legit. I bet. I see the things that they doing when they do it, but they don't do it like this. Niggas say that they the bomb, and they really be lit. I see the things that they doing when they do it, but they don't do it like this. True Nation.
Ain't no ghetto without us. Revelation 2:9. Tell them.
Yeah, all my brothers, yeah, we rich shock. We got the truth, we come from rich stock. That's on my tribe, I never flip-flop. Thy kingdom come, now watch it TikTok. We got this truth and now we rich up. We headed back up to the tip top. Menorah golden, watch it drip drop. We in the hood, but now we rich up, yeah.
My folks stayed in the Hoovers, I was born in the trades. I was raised in the hundreds, but I ain't never joined the gang. Affiliated, I was with it, I ain't played no games. Wasn't banging, but I had to show I ain't no lame. Copperworth Entertainment, yeah, I did my thing. Until I woke up to this truth and found out we still slaves. Niggas killing over colors, time to rise up for our brothers. Time to unify our hustles, time to lead our baby mothers out to lay like Nazareth. I was raised about the gutter, for the homies I got locked up, not a word I never uttered. So for Yasharahla, yeah, you best believe I'll die. This ain't Christianity, you best believe
yeah,
I'll
all my
ride.
brothers, yeah, we rich shock. We got the truth, we come from rich stock. That's on my tribe, I never flip-flop. Thy kingdom come, now watch it TikTok. We got this truth and now we rich up. We headed back up to the tip top.
We rich.
Menorah golden, watch it drip drop. We in the hood, but now we rich up, yeah.
Reclining my seats, I'm looking at the stars. Not too long ago was blowing kush about the car. Always wanted fame until I found the 12 stars. But now a nigga rich, the wisdom got me hella far. Looking back on my life, this shit is so surreal. Like I came up on the lotto, how a nigga feel. Keep the law as the motto, now tell me what's the deal. Riding smooth, diamond chain, compliment the wheels. Yeah, that's how we pull up fly. If my brothers got an issue, then I bet I ride. Even if I take a loss, you can bet I try. Cause I'ma get a couple off, and that's before
yeah,
I
all
die,
my brothers, yeah, we rich shock. We got the truth, we come from rich stock. That's on my tribe, I never flip-flop. Thy kingdom come, now watch it TikTok. We got this truth and now we rich. We headed back up to the tip top. Menorah gold and watch it drip drop. We in the hood, but now we rich. Yeah.
It's so cold in these streets, I take the heat outside. I keep a sword like Cephas, just believe I might. Ain't an army on this earth that can see these tribes. Dressed in warlike apparel, best believe we fly. It's time to get the doctrine right, it's time to feed these sheep. What we sowing to each other, that's what we gon' reap. Shit, you niggas claim you bout that life. Some niggas banging for the set, but I'm an Israelite. He full of pride and full of shit, then I'ma cut him on sight. Hakeem ain't never gotta tell me twice. I'm a soldier for Christ, and Mashiach the king is not to be mocked. I love my nation, but 2/3 of y'all can still get popped. Blah.
Desire one Ariala. Yashamai. Yasharahla.
We got the truth, we come from Woodstock. That's on my tribe, I never flip-flop. For kingdom come, to watch it TikTok. We got the truth and now we rich. We heading back up to the TikTok. Menorah gold and watch it drip drop. We in the hood, but now we rich. Yeah.
And y'all know what it is. Another Woolly Mane production.
At first light, right before the sunset, beheld with my own eyes. Ah, but what a blessing. It's a new moon, the first crescent. We gon' share some mirth and some gladness. Ain't nobody stressing. Look, I was too focused on the ways of men. Had to refocus, turn my ways to him. Let's get it right, we ain't afraid of men. The kingdom is the goal, and yes, we aim to win. Our fathers watched to see the month begin. There must be light to see was groping, trying to make it in. Father, forgive us for this sin, cause we didn't know no better. Glad our fathers kept a record, this cannot be severed. Not the conjunction or the fool, it was in those letters. Not one jot, no one tittle, by the law we fettered. We'll probably get the kingdom faster if we work together. Glorified and it will never.
We celebrate.
Yo, Big Bo.
Yo, real sir.
Yo.
Well, we celebrate. And I want to take the opportunity right now to say all praise be to Yahweh, Bahasham, Hamashiach, Yahweh Shah. I'm going to say that one more time. All praise be to Yahweh, Bahasham, Hamashiach, Yahweh Shah. Hey, we bless. The spirit of one of my dear brothers, Zabak, I want to say, and we gonna do it. Check it out, this how we gonna do it. On the count of 3, I want y'all to say, Shalam Yasharahla. 1, 2, 3. Go ahead and drop it, baby. New moon. It's a new moon.
And y'all know what it is. Another Woolly Mane production.
Beheld with my own eyes. Ah, but what a blessing. It's a new moon, the first crescent. We gon' share some mirth and some gladness. Ain't nobody stressing.
I tell my Akim Shalom as we pour around the drinks. We could look up in the sky and know exactly what he thinks. It's a new moon, a celebration. The Kaaba or the Trula that's before me is the only temptation. Tonight we do it right, so call up all the tribes to see my fifth shot like the book of Deuteronomy. Hey, these laws are part of me, and I get ruled with wicked Jews like Nehemiah. You gon' have to pardon me. Just look at what we built together. Our haters probably couldn't imagine the better successor, but all praises go to Yah, cause we don't worship men. You know that Jake's always late, let them brothers in. A holy feast, so you know we came dapper down. Menorah chains, yellow diamonds with a golden crown. Yeah, Howard Shy got a hand, he ain't gon' let us drown. We get it cracking once you hear them trumpets sound.
At first light, right before the sunset, beheld with my own eyes. Ah, but what a blessing. It's a new moon, the first crescent. We gon' share some mirth and some gladness. Ain't nobody stressing.
This the second Thursday of the month, so that means we are going into stick to the script. Stick to the script. Today we're doing in the classroom. Maybe next time we'll do Chopper City. We don't know yet. But I want to jump straight into it. The King James Version Bible. I haven't really seen many lessons brought out on the King James Version Bible as far as why we use that one, what sources can we use to validate it. We've definitely have heard a lot of points, you know, when we're debating with people, from, oh, he was a homosexual, to, oh, it's so convoluted, oh, Shakespeare wrote it, oh, he was a white man and the white man wrote it. What else? Oh, that one's outdated. There's so many other ones that, you know, other Bibles that we could be using that are so much better than the King James Version Bible. Okay, so why do the Israelites decide that they are going to use the KJV? Today is going to be a little different. And what I mean by that is, I'm not bringing out a billion scriptures. I'm not. Today is all about the resources, all about the references, all about the information. I want brothers and sisters to understand why we have chosen to use the King James Version Bible. I want brothers to walk away confident that, yes, this has been diligently translated. Yes, this is a more than adequate version of the Bible, and it hasn't been convoluted, it hasn't been diluted, any of that stuff, right? So today, it's stick to the script, but today we're going a little off script, right? We're kind of deviating from what we usually do. First thing I want to do, I want to grab two things. Let's go to your Bibles, go to Ecclesiasticus. And I want the prologue. I want to go to the prologue where it starts to say, I'm going to tell you right now. It containeth therefore wise saying, dark senses. Where's that bad boy at? Oh, I forgot there's two of them. My bad. It's in the second one. The prologue of the wisdom of Jesus, the son of Sirach. And I want to start, I'm pretty sure you have it highlighted. Go ahead, read that.
For the same things uttered in Hebrew and translated into an other tongue have not the same force in them. And not only these things, but the law itself and the prophets and the rest of the books have no small differences when they are spoken in their own language.
Read.
For in the 8th and 30th year coming into Egypt, when Euergetes was king and continuing there some time, I found a book of no small learning.
So Sirach said, I found a book. And it wasn't just, oh, you know, small wise sayings, whatever. He said this was like a book of like some real life, serious wisdom and understanding, right? Read.
Therefore, I thought it most necessary for me to bestow some diligence and travail to interpret it.
And that's what individuals have done on a number of occasions, right? They have taken the time and the diligence to translate and interpret, the Bible, the Hebrew text, right? Let's go to the very front of your Bible. Let me see if I can find it. I wish I would have highlighted it. I'm lacking. You probably didn't either. Let me see. Nah, it was a part that referenced the, don't even sweat it. It's all good. Because that was something that kind of just hit me. That's why I just grabbed the scripture. But in the prologue of Ecclesiasticus, go to Isaiah 28. In the prologue of Ecclesiasticus, It said, I took diligent time. I took my time. I made a diligent effort to interpret this book, right? Let's go to Isaiah 28 verse, I think it's 10. Isaiah chapter 28 and verse 10. Start at 9.
Isaiah chapter 28, verse 10.
9.
No, verse 9. Whom shall he teach knowledge?
Uh-huh.
And whom shall he make to understand doctrine?
Uh-huh.
Them that are weaned from the milk and drawn from the breast.
Right, so he said these are the individuals that are going to learn the knowledge, the wisdom, the deep sayings, right? Now watch this, read.
For precept must be upon precept,
Uh-huh.
precept upon precept,
Uh-huh.
line upon line, line upon line, here a little and there a little.
So the way we're supposed to read these scriptures is precept upon precept. The precept is specifically a verse, a specific, well, actually, if you want to get the technical term, it's teachings, it's doctrine, it's understanding, right? So the Bible is not, oh, I'm just going to read it all the way through. You get so many people that say, oh, I don't read the Bible front to back 100 times. Okay, but that's not how you read this book. Some of this stuff isn't even in chronological order. And we see that there are certain areas that if you don't understand something earlier on, you won't understand what's going on in the middle or the end. Everything runs, it's cohesive, but a lot of times it's not chronological. So sometimes people get confused. But he said precept must be upon precept. That's how you're going to understand this book, right? Read on.
For with stammering lips and another tongue.
Now this is the important part. He said with stammering lips, foreign lips, different lips, and another tongue, a different language, right? Read.
Will he speak to his people?
That's how he's going to talk to his people. He's going to speak to them in different languages. You got Spanish Bibles. You got Aramaic Bibles. You got Arab Bibles. You got Ethiopian Bibles, right? Different manuscripts that have all of the same thing that was written in the Hebrew, also known as the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Hebrew text, the King James Version Bible, which was translated from those particular things, right? So, the question is, of all the Bibles that we have had, why are we reading the King James Version Bible? You got the NIV, which was also translated from Hebrew, some of it. You have the ESV, which was translated from the RSV. The RSV was translated from Hebrew. Why are we reading that? Right? You have the GNT. You have the ASV. You have so many different Bibles. Why are we choosing the Authorized King James Version Bible? Let's go to the PowerPoint. We're going to get into the history of this Bible, because there's a lot of confusion, there's a lot of assertions, there's a lot of conjecture on what the King James Version Bible is, who translated it, what was the purpose of it, right? We're going to get into it. First things first, King James did not translate the Bible. I'll say it again. The Authorized King James Version Bible was not translated by King James. And we're going to get the history on how the King James Version Bible came to be. Oh, God. I actually didn't know that. All praises. This is what I want to do, right? So a lot of this information, you can see at the bottom of the screen, comes from a documentary called When God Spoke English. There's a number of other, all of my references are at the bottom of the PowerPoint, right? But I'm letting you know off rip that you'll be able to see the, what is it called? The references at the bottom, and a majority of them came from this particular documentary, right? So here's the thing. How did the King James Version Bible come to be? First things first, we had a situation where there was a religious divide. You had the Church of England, Catholicism at the time, against what was known at that time as a sect of the Protestants known as the Puritans. You had other Protestants at that time that were a lot more, radical. And they were like, we're going to completely flee. We want to separate from the Church of England altogether. And then you had the Puritans. The Puritans was like, oh, we're going to take a different approach. We're going to try to work within the system, and we're going to try to clean things up, right? So you have the Church of England against the Puritans. The Church of England held to the hierarchy and traditions more than scriptures. They believed that the bishops were at the top. They believed in order. Basically, they believed in law and order of the Catholic Church at the time, right? The Puritans cared solely about what was written in the Bible. They hated church traditions, and they even felt a lot of these church traditions to be anti-Christian and even unlawful. These divisions threatened to undermine the authority of James as the King of England, so James searched for a way to bind the two sides, the Church of England and the Puritans. So, the Puritans requested, let me give you a little tidbit. So the Church of England and the Puritans were pretty much going back and forth. The Puritans was like, y'all got all of these man-made traditions going on, and a lot of this stuff ain't according to the scriptures. And a lot of this stuff is more so just for the purpose of hierarchy. And we're against that. We're not okay with that. We got a problem with that. Now, the problem with that is, if you undermine the hierarchy of the church, you'll start to want to undermine the hierarchy of the government. That was King James's fear at the time. So he's trying to figure out a way to keep the Puritans in line, but also keep the church in line. He didn't want to cut out the bishops, because if he cuts out the bishops and the hierarchy in the church, then he's saying, well, you know, there's no point of a hierarchy, and that can threaten him. But he understood that the Puritans or the Protestants were a major portion of his subjects. So he had to find a way to make them happy without destroying the hierarchy of the church. Let's take it back to the PowerPoint. So it says, the Puritans requested a conference to discuss all outstanding issues because the Puritans believed that they could reform the church from within instead of having to separate entirely from the Church of England, like some Protestants actually did. So you have the overarching umbrella of what was known as Protestants. And the Protestants was like, to hell with the Catholic Church, to hell with the Church of England. We out of here completely. We don't agree with this. And a lot of times the way that they represented themselves came off as seditious. So they say, you know, we're going to leave altogether. The Puritans said, nah, I think we can create a reform. I believe we can make a reform in the church. Let's try it. So they tried, once King James came into rulership, they tried to reason with King James. They said, let's have a conference. Let's hold a conference, right? So James thought this to be a good idea to keep Puritans from stirring up dissent. Agreeing to the conference would put the Puritans on King James's side. So he was on the side of the Church of England, but he said, you know what? If I can give the Puritans some type of leeway to show that they do have a voice, it'll stop them from stirring up dissension amongst the people. So that's what he did, right? So they held a conference in the Hampton Court. It was known as the Hampton Court Conference. It says King James had a meeting with the bishops of the church and the Puritans. During the second day of that conference, a Puritan suggests that a new translation of the Bible be written because the ones being read in the churches these were their words, quote, corrupt and not answerable to the truth of the original. And we're going to get into a number of previous English Bibles. So, here's the thing. King James had this meeting, and he was evenly, he was even killed on both sides. He didn't show favoritism to the bishops. He didn't show favoritism to the Puritans. As a matter of fact, he was disrespectful to both sides to show that I don't have a favorite, right? So in the second day, a Puritan said, well, how about this? We're looking at all of these different Bibles that we have. The ones that we're actually reading in the church aren't even honest. I'm trying to think of a better word. Aren't even, it doesn't measure up to the original text and what the scriptures actually say. There is a bias in these Bibles, King James. So why not create a new one that is unbiased, that is solely off of what the previous, the Hebraic and the Greek texts are saying? So number one, King James did not come up with this idea of a King James Version Bible. It was a Puritan. It was someone, and when you go and you research the history of the Puritans believed solely in the scriptures. Yashan, do me a favor and mute everything except mics 1 through 6. So the Puritans believed in solely, if you go and research the history of the Puritans, all they cared about is what the scriptures said. That was it. That was all. All the antics, all of the traditions of the church, said to hell with all of that. And that's what the Puritans wanted. They wanted a Bible that said solely what the text said. That was it. That was all. Right? So they proposed this to King James. King James said, that's a great idea. In addition to in addition to it being a Bible that we're trying to create to be completely unbiased, it's also a Bible that I authorize. And all of England will be using it. And if they all are using it, this will stamp, solidify me as a great ruler. This will solidify a portion of his legacy. And it also gives, to a degree, some divinity to his reign, because he is the one that is commissioning the translation of God's word. Let's go back to the PowerPoint. So, we had prior Bibles. These are just a few of them. We had the Tyndale Bible. We had the Coverdale Bible. We had the Geneva Bible. We even had the Bishop's Bible. Now, we're going to talk about a few of these Bibles because we have to understand what was going on. First things first, King James did not write this Bible. It was proposed by a Puritan because all of the earlier English Bibles had something wrong with them. And the ones that really didn't have something wrong with them, they threatened the power of the crown, right? So, first one, the Tyndale Bible. It was written and created, by William Tyndale. He began translating the New Testament directly from Greek in 1523. He was forbidden by church authorities in England to continue his translation, and subsequently moved to Germany in 1524 to continue his New Testament translation, which was finished in 1525. So William Tyndale was one of the first to translate the Hebrew Bible. He translated the whole New Testament. He was, I believe, the first person to translate the whole New Testament, right? And the first two copies of his Bible was smuggled into England. He also translated part of the Old Testament, the Torah, so the first 5 books of the Bible, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, from the Pentateuch around 1530. So William Tyndale translated Genesis through Deuteronomy from the Greek version of the Torah into English. He also translated the whole New Testament. Tyndale continued to translate the rest of the Old Testament, but he didn't get to finish. He was captured in Antwerp, which is in Germany, before he could finish. Tyndale was condemned for heresy and executed by strangulation and then burned at the stake in 1536. Now, one of the issues with the Tyndale Bible, we have it right here. Owning a copy of the Tyndale Bible could warrant the death penalty if caught. The 1525 version was different from the 1526 version, so his original version was different from the one they republished, in that the 1526 version does not have any explanatory prologue, nor does it possess the marginal notes. Here was the problem. The Tyndale Bible was outlawed for its seditious undertone. So Tyndale's Bible subtly challenged the crown, challenged hierarchy, challenged order. And if you challenged the king, that was a penalty punishable by death. This is why they had a problem with Tyndale's Bible, right? This was the issue with Tyndale's Bible. Tyndale was critiquing and putting into question the hierarchy of the king and the church. Here's an example. Matthew 16:18, translate, "Thou art Peter, upon this rock I will build my congregation." Now, some translated verses inferred that the people made the church, not the leaders or the bishops, right? So the issue was this. Tyndale was pushing the envelope on, we, the people, are the ones that make the church. You bishops don't make the church. So he was challenging the hierarchy of the church. And that was one of the things King James had a problem with. And here was one of the quotes from King James himself in the conference when they were speaking with the Puritans. He said, "No bishop, no king," alluding to his favor for the structure of the institutional church. So if you had a problem with a bishop or the leaders of the church, they felt you would start to challenge the crown. We would have a problem with the government. So they said, Tyndale Bible, trash it, can't do it. Plus, it was incomplete. Now, on to the Coverdale Bible. The Coverdale Bible was the first complete Bible printed in English. It was translated by Miles Coverdale. Miles Coverdale was not a linguist in either Greek or Hebrew. Here's one of the problems. He was not a linguist. He didn't know Hebrew, he didn't know Greek, so he couldn't translate directly from original texts. He used much of Tyndale's existing work, including his complete New Testament, for his Bible. So instead of going back and translating from original text, he just took an English translation and rewrote that. He translated the remainder of the Old Testament and the Apocrypha from the Latin Vulgate and German translation, such as Luther's Bible and the Swiss German Zurich Bible. So he went into Latin. Again, we had older translations at this time. So he's going into Latin. He's going into German. He didn't have any idea of any understanding of the original languages, which the Bible was printed in. He didn't know Greek. He didn't know Hebrew, right? Now, was his translation good? I mean, you would have to go and look at the original texts, right? But this right here would eliminate it as one of the better ones because you have a number of Bibles that went back to the Hebrew, went back to the Greek. He translated from another Hebrew translation. He translated from a German version of the Bible and then some Latin. Back to the PowerPoint. Coverdale completed his translation in 1535. By 1540, King Henry VIII ordered that a copy of the English Bible be placed in every church around England. This was a direct challenging of the papal authority. Coverdale's Bible was placed in every church in England. Now, in this particular time, the only people that could read that Bible was the leaders, was the elite, was the bishops. King Henry VIII said, look, we got an English Bible, and we're going to put it in the church for everyone to read in English because it was always originally read in Latin. That was the issue. They were like, dang, we have the bishops, the leaders reading it in Latin and then translating it over into English and explaining it to us. Now everybody could read it because there was an English translation of it. But there were better Bibles to come. Now we're going to get into the Geneva Bible. The Geneva Bible is actually one of the best translations. Honestly, they argue that the Geneva Bible is a better translation than the King James Version Bible. But the problem with it is the Geneva Bible has some bias in the marginal notes. That's the problem. That was the main issue King James had with the Geneva Bible. Some of the marginal notes came off as seditious, came off as challenging the crown. Again, all of my references, you guys can screenshot the PowerPoint. All of my references are at the bottom. They're in small text below all of the all of the bullet points, okay? So y'all can go back and read all of this information on your own. I was just summarizing it. I was getting all the bullet points out so we can talk about this. So here's the thing. King James had a conference. In this conference, Puritans said, hey, let's create a new Bible because the Bibles that we are reading are corrupt. We had a couple that were not really corrupt, but it challenged the crown. So all of the leaders had a problem with it. And they weren't exactly perfect. Coverdale, for example, was not perfect because it wasn't even translated from the Hebrew. It was translated from other English texts, right? Tyndale Bible wasn't complete. So we didn't even have the complete version of that. So we chunked that out. We chunk out Coverdale because Coverdale was translated from another English text, and we have a number of different texts that were translated straight from Hebrew and Greek, Geneva being one of them, right? Watch this. Back to the PowerPoint. The Geneva Bible was created by a collaboration of scholars. So this was the first one, the first Bible that was translated by a committee of individuals. It was translated from Hebrew and Greek, and it conferred or compared with the best translations of other languages. So anybody who translated the Bible in German who had access to Hebrew texts, they found their Bible and they compared their writings to the Germans. They went back to the Masoretic text, the Hebrew script manuscripts that they had, the Greek manuscripts that they had. They compared those. So they were doing what's it called? Comparative textual criticism. Right? So they took German texts, other English texts, Hebrew texts, Greek manuscripts, and they were laying it all out as they were translating. And they were like, okay, this is what we got from here. Let's see if they got that over there. Okay, this is what we got over here. Let's see if they got that over there. What about them over there? They took their time translating this. It was an entire committee. It says it was translated from Hebrew and Greek, and it was conferred or compared with the best translations of other languages. It was the most thoroughly translated and best translated Bible of its time up until the King James Version Bible. It was known as the People's Bible. The annotations to help readers understand the writing of the Scriptures. It had annotations to help readers understand the writings of the Scriptures. So here's the thing. Just like we struggle today with reading the thou and thee and thy and howbeit and albeit and wheretofore and heretofore and understanding Old English, a lot of people had struggles with reading the Bible. So what the Geneva Bible, the Council of the Geneva Bible did, they said, okay, we're going to make annotations kind of like synopses to summarize what this verse is saying, what this passage is saying. The first to do it. And their translation was pristine. Back to the PowerPoint. Again, I'm going to say it again. I'm going to keep saying it so you guys remember. References at the bottom. References at the bottom of the, what is it called, of each slide. Here were the problems with the Geneva Bible. Back to the PowerPoint. King James believed it was the worst of all Bibles. Not the translation, though, but the marginal notes. James saw the notes as very partial, untrue, seditious, and savoring too much of dangerous and traitorous conceits. So when they're reading the Geneva Bible and they have these annotations, they're summarizing what's going on, but they're also putting in their bias. And there's one example right here that we're going to read, right? It says, there were seditious undertones in the annotations which challenged what James refers to in his Basilicon Duran. This is also a really good book by King James. For all of those that say, oh, King James was a fag, King James did this, go read the Basilicon Duran. It debunks all that garbage too. Quick tidbit, all of the rumors about King James came about 25 years later from a man named Sir Anthony Weldon, who was fired, who was on the cabinet of King James, but he disrespected people in Scotland. Mind you, King James was Scottish. He was the 6th king of Scotland, the 1st king of England. Sir Anthony Weldon hated Scots, disrespected Scots. King James fired him. So then 25 years after he died, he said, oh, he's a fag, he's this, excuse me. I hope we don't get censored because I use that word. He's a fairy, he's this, he's that. He had a lover that was a man, blah, blah, blah. All of that came after King James had died. Go read the Basilicon Duran. He talks on things like that. He said there are certain things that cannot be forgiven. And homosexuality was one of them. But that was just a quick tidbit. I'm sorry I went off on a tangent. So it says that there were seditious undertones in the annotations which challenged what James referred to in his Basilicon Duran as the divine rights of kings. Now, go to Daniel chapter 6 and verse 22. And we're going to talk about one of the annotations in the Bible. And I thought about bringing it. I actually have a Geneva Bible, and it actually is there. And the Geneva Bible, the English looks kind of like the 1611 Bibles that everyone has, that has F's instead of S's and all of that. It's very hard to read. Go to Daniel chapter 6 and verse 22.
Book of Daniel, chapter 6, verse 22. My God has sent his angel and has shut the lion's mouth, that they have not hurt me, for as much as before him.
I'm sorry, let's start at let's go up to like 19. Let's start at 19.
Verse 19. Then the king arose very early in the morning and went in haste unto the den of lions. And when he came into the den, he cried with a lamentable voice unto Daniel. And the king spake and said to Daniel, O Daniel, servant of the living God, is thy God, whom thou servest continually, able to deliver thee from the lions? Then said Daniel unto the king, O king, live forever. My God has sent his angel and has shut the lion's mouth, that they have not hurt me, for as much as before him innocency was found in me. And also before thee, O king, have I done no hurt.
Right. So, excuse me. Here it is. Verse 22 is all I needed. So, all that to say, so Daniel was shut up in the lion's den, right? And Daniel didn't do anything wrong to be thrown in the lion's den, except according to the king's commandment at the time, right? So here was the annotation, the marginal note that was written, which, again, will give a subtle illusion that it's okay to do this. Go back to the PowerPoint. Daniel 6 and 22 annotations. For he disobeyed the king's wicked commandment in order to obey God. So he did no injury to the king, who ought to command nothing by which God would be dishonored. Now, there's nothing wrong with that in our eyes, but in that time, to say a king was giving out a wicked decree, a wicked commandment, when these people believed that kings were given their seat by God, comes off as seditious. And because it comes off as seditious, they're like, we can't have this. Because then they're going to start challenging the things that we say if they feel away, which will question the quote-unquote divine right of kings. So the Geneva Bible is a problem because of all these annotations. We can't have this. And the Geneva Bible also regularly used the word tyrant in reference to a king. So just like we have programming today, you know, our young women are being programmed to be naked because of all of the things that's being put on social media and TV and all of that. Programming is very subtle. People, all they did was read back then. And this was one of the main books they read. So if they keep reading over and over, and instead of king, they see tyrant, 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 what's going to happen is when the king does piss them off and they do feel away, they're going to feel like the king is a tyrant. They're going to start rebelling against the king. That challenges the power of the king. We cannot have the Geneva Bible because the Geneva Bible is challenging the divine right and rule of the king. We're going to go to the next slide. Here's another problem with the Geneva Bible. Exodus 1 and 19. The Geneva Bible says that their disobedience in this act was lawful. So they disobeyed Pharaoh at this time, which was the king of Egypt. Though it qualifies, I'm going to read it from the top. The Geneva Bible says that their disobedience in this act was lawful, though it qualifies that their deception was evil. Tricking the tyrant is allowed by the law. McGrath draws the parallel to the 17th century as radical Protestant factions such as the Puritans began to view James as their oppressor. The suggestion that it was lawful to disobey him became increasingly welcoming to the Puritans, and it was worrying James. So, Puritans said we need to create a new Bible because the ones that we're reading at the time, which was the bishop's Bible, was flawed and it was not a pure translation. The Geneva Bible, banned. Tyndale Bible, banned. Coverdale Bible, outdated. All we had was the bishop's Bible. And the Bishop's Bible was a horrible translation. So King James decided, okay, let's do that. So I'm trying to continue to keep your mind refreshed on what's going on here. Problems with the Geneva Bible. To conclude, the implication of these texts and annotations is very lucid. The king must be disobeyed if he violates the will of God and commands us to do likewise, which is a problem, right? This was the issue that King James had. McGrath summarizes the issue insightfully. James I held the kings had been ordained by God to rule the nations of the world, to promote justice and dispense wisdom. It was therefore imperative that kings should be respected and obeyed unconditionally and in all circumstances. The ample notes provided in the Geneva Bible taught otherwise. So the Geneva Bible was teaching people to rebel against the king. We could not have the Geneva Bible, but the Geneva Bible was actually a really good translation. You're going to understand what this has to do with the King James Version Bible soon. Because, well, I'm going to summarize it for you. There were other Bibles, because some people are misinformed. King James Version Bible was the first ordained Bible in English that was translated. No, it wasn't. There were many Bibles before the King James Version Bible. King James wrote the Bible. No, he didn't. He commissioned people to do it. It was King James' idea. No, it wasn't. Somebody brought it up to him, and he thought it to be a good idea, and he commissioned people to do it. Remember these points, because these are the points that people come out with when they want to challenge the Bible. Shakespeare wrote the Bible. No, he didn't. No, he didn't. Now, the Bishop's Bible, led by Archbishop Parker of Canterbury, given its name because all the translators were or became bishops. It was basically a revision of the Great Bible with some guidance of the Geneva Bible. The Bishop's Bible was not translated from Hebrew or Greek. It was a translation of an English translation already. And the Geneva Bible gave it some guidance because the Geneva Bible was translated directly from Hebrew and Greek. So these people said, hey, let's use this Bible and this Bible to translate and make our own English Bible. These two English Bibles we're going to use to make our English Bible. The issue was it was horribly translated in comparison to its contemporary, the Geneva Bible. So this Bible came out around the same time as the Geneva Bible, and it was a piss-poor translation. Go to Ecclesiastes 11:1. And this was one of the notable scriptures that was poorly translated. Ecclesiastes, chapter 11 and verse 1.
Ecclesiastes chapter 11, verse 1. Cast thy bread upon the waters, for thou shalt find it after many days. Give a portion to 7 and also to 8. For thou knowest not what evil shall be upon the earth.
Right. So Ecclesiastes chapter 11 and verse 1 is translated, cast thy bread upon the waters, for thou shalt find it after many days. That's the KJV version of it, right? Bishop's Bible version, this was their translation. Lay thy bread upon wet faces, so shalt thou find it after many days. Now, the Hebrew word, or what do we have right here? Upon faces referenced surfaces, right? But they translated it as faces. This was just one of the many translation errors that they had in the Bishop's Bible. So it didn't catch on. People was like, I don't care if this is ordained by the bishops and Queen Elizabeth. Throw that crap away. We're not reading it. This was one that was in the church, and people refused to deal with it, refused to read it. So, back to the PowerPoint. King James, now here's the thing. King James was in favor of the Bishop's Bible because the Bishop's Bible held true to the hierarchy. It believed still in a hierarchy in the church. The bishops led, the church. They didn't have seditious terms like tyrant and annotations that alluded to us being able to disobey the king and things like that, right? So King James ordered the bishop's Bible to be used as a guide for his Bible because he agreed with the politics of the Bible. James sought to create a Bible that underlined his divine authority without alienating the people who were his subjects. So he wanted to create a Bible that made sure the people didn't rebel. You saw all throughout the Bible that the king was regarded, was respected. They didn't call him tyrants. They didn't have annotations that alluded to them being wicked, things of that nature, right? But he also wanted the Bible to be true to the translation because the people understood that the bishop's Bible and previous Bibles were corrupt, or they weren't translated properly, or the ones that were translated properly had annotations that they deemed corrupt, so they weren't allowed to read it. So King James said, we're going to throw all of that out. Cool. We're going to start over. We're going to use these Bibles as a guide, but we're going to translate from the Hebrew scripts, and we're going to try to keep it true to what the text is saying. Here were the rules for translating the King James Version Bible. I know it's a lot of reading, but it's very important so you fully understand why the King James Version Bible is more than adequate and honestly the best the best choice of Bible to read. Look how thorough it is. Here were the rules for translating the KJV Bible. The ordinary Bible this is to be the ordinary Bible read in the church, commonly called the bishop's Bible. I butchered that. The ordinary Bible read in the church, commonly called the bishop's Bible, to be followed. So the bishop's Bible is what people were reading in the church, but the people hated it. But they said, we're going to follow the politics of this Bible. And as little altered as the original texts will permit. This is talking about the Hebrew and the Greek. The names of the prophets and the holy writers with the other names in the text to be retained as near as may be according as they are vulgarly used. So he was saying we want to try to make sure that we translate these names properly. The old ecclesiastical words to be kept as the word church, not to be translated to congregation. So there were certain words that were translated differently that King James said, no, we're going to use the words that were used prior. So we're not using congregation, we're going to use church, we're going to use bishop, we're going to use this, right? These words are going to stay in there. You're not going to deviate those words. When any word has diverse significations, that to be kept which hath been most commonly used by most eminent fathers, being agreeable to the propriety of the place and the analogies of the faith. So if there's a word that has that can be translated into 2 or 3 different words, what did those that before us that were translating, what did they use it as? Okay, we're going to go with that. The division of chapters be altered either to not at all or as little as may be if necessary so require. No marginal notes to be affixed. This was the issue with the Geneva Bible. You're not going to put any marginal synopsis or summarizations of what was going on. Not going to do that. No marginal notes to be affixed, but here's the thing. But only for the explanation of Hebrew or Greek words, which cannot, without some circumlocution, be briefly or fitly be expressed in the text. So, if you look at your King James Version Bible, they have numbers next to certain words. And in the middle of them or on the right side, you'll see an explanation of certain things. So I have one here, Ecclesiastes 11, and let's see where it comes. Where is that number 5? Might be right here. Yada, yada, yada. Might be on this side. Here it is. Ecclesiastes 12:3, it says, in the day when the keepers of the house shall tremble, the strong men shall bow themselves, and the grinders cease because they are few, and those that look out of the windows be darkened, right? So there's a little 5 next to that phrase, the grinders cease because they are few. And in the middle, there's a clarifying phrase that explains what it's saying. Or the grinders fail because they grind little. That is defining what is being read in Ecclesiastes 12. He said that's all you can do. You're not summarizing verses. You're not summarizing passages. None of that. If you need to translate something a little better, or if you need to clarify something in the text, you can write them in the marginal notes in the middle. And I'm saying this to say there was no collusion. There was no there is Ecclesiastes, not Sirach. There was no collusion. There was no, it's what's the word? It's corrupt. There was none of that. That wasn't what was going on. He said, we're going to translate it as straightly, as closely possible as we can to the original manuscripts. And we'll have summarizing notes, or excuse me, not summarizing notes, clarifying notes in the middle for certain words in these translations, right? Back to the PowerPoint. No marginal notes at all to be affixed, but only for the explanation of the Hebrew or Greek words, which cannot, without some circumlocution, be briefly and fitly be expressed in the text. Such quotations of places to be marginally set down as shall serve for the fit reference of one scripture to another, every particular man of each company to take the same chapter or chapters and, having translated or amended them severally by himself where he thinks good, all to meet together to confirm what they have done and agree for their part what shall stand. Now, this is very important because this goes into how diligent they translated this. So, he had three different bodies, three different councils, three different, parties, for lack of better words. It was 48 translators, I believe 54 translators, but there were 60 that were asked to come. There was a few that didn't come. 54 translators, and they all translated at different locations. Some at Westminster, some at Cambridge, some at, it was one more place. And all of the translators were to translate these things separately. Even the parties that were all in one place translating the Old Testament, each person had to translate it by themselves. Then they came together as a committee or a council, and then they said, well, what did you get? This is how I got it to read. This is how I got it to translate. And they all compared what they translated. So it's not like it was just some fast stuff. It's not like they just all came together and said, okay, we're just going to do it like this. It was diligently translated. Right? Number 9, as any one company has dispatched any one book in this manner, they shall send it to the rest to be considered of seriously or judiciously, for his majesty is very careful on this point. Right? So it says, as any one company hath dispatched any one book in this manner, they shall send it to the rest. So once they're done and they made their, okay, this is what we're coming up with, you send it to the rest of the council, and they need to look over it. There was, I think, 3 or 4 levels of revision before they completed it, and we're gonna read about that too. I don't want to go through all of them because we'll be here forever. Here it is. Here's some more of the rules. There was, I believe, 15 rules. So I'll let you look at them. "12 is a good one. Letters to be sent from every bishop to the rest of his clergy, admonishing them of his translation in hand, and to move and charge as many as, being skillful in the tongues, have taken pains in that kind to send their particular observations to the company, either Westminster, Cambridge, or Oxford, according as it was directed before the king's letter to the archbishops." Right? So, first of all, these people were ridiculously skilled in the Hebrew and the Greek. And I got a couple of the translators and their bios, basically. And we're going to get to that in a moment. By a later rule, 3 or 4 of the most ancient engraved divines in either of the universities not employed or translating to be assigned to be overseers of the translation for the better observation of the 4th rule. So there was 3 revisions that the King James Bible underwent. First, they translated as individuals. Then they all came together at Cambridge, who translated like the Old Testament, right? And they said, okay, this is what I got. Let's sit down. Let's talk about it. Once they were done, they passed it off to the next committee. Once they were done, they passed it off to the next level. Then they would revise it. Then it was one more level. Then they would pass it off to Cambridge and so on and so forth. It was very diligent. Even though it was ordered that the bishop's Bible be used primarily as a guide for the translation, the translators used the Geneva Bible mainly as a guide. Again, the Geneva Bible was the most accurately translated Bible at that time before the KJV was created. It was better than the bishop's Bible, it was better than the Tyndale's Bible, it was better than the Coverdale's Bible. So they used the bishop's Bible for the politics. They used the Geneva Bible for the actual translations. Like, okay, this is what we got. Let's see what the Geneva Bible got. Okay, cool. This is close. This is as close as we're going to get it, right? So Metzger observes the inevitable reliance of the KJV, the KJV had on the Geneva Bible. Some estimates that 20% of the King James Bible came directly from the Geneva Bible. Lloyd Berry, building off of Butterworth, gives the following comparisons. Wycliffe version, including English sermons, 4%. Tyndale's work, 18%. Coverdale's work, 13%. Geneva, 19%. Bishop's Bible, 4%. All other versions before the 1611, 3%, totaling 61%. King James Bible new material was 39%. So they went into the ancient Hebrew. They went into the Greek. They also compared the text to all of these other Bibles. And then 40% of it, they didn't use any of the Bibles. It was straight manuscripts. The Authorized King James Version Bible. Though it is famously said that there were only 47 translators involved, the process of translating the KJV, there were actually over 50, about 60, including revisers and overseers and general contributors. We're going to talk about this. Because again, we're going to establish why this is the best Bible to read. Every contributor was a university graduate and at the very least proficient in Hebrew or Greek. So you didn't get people that were, I kind of know it, I dabble. Like they said the very least, they were proficient. Then you had some that were advanced. You had some that were doctors in it. But at the bare minimum, these people were proficient in it. Here is a list of the First Westminster and Cambridge Company. Lancelot Andrews was the director. He was the overseer of everything. William Bedwell, Francis Burleigh. And you guys, and I'm giving you this so y'all can go look this up. So you guys know who translated the Bible. You guys know their credentials. Once you learn their credentials, you're like, dang, these people were equipped to do this. And you'll see that the NIV doesn't stand to it. The ESV don't stand to it. The ASV don't stand to it. The Yahweh Bible don't stand to it. The what's that joint? The Sefer doesn't stand to it. The KJV Bible is more than adequate. The KJV Bible is not what they call infallible because, again, that's why Sirach said we did our best to diligently translate. The same words in Hebrew don't have that power in another language. But as close as you can get, you got it here. So go, again, sources at the bottom. You guys can go and read about the credentials of these translators. The KingJamesBible.com/library/KJV translators. Then I had another website, KingJamesBibleTranslators.org/bios. Here was the first Oxford company. John Harding, he was the director. Richard Brett, Richard Fairclough, Daniel Fately, Thomas Holland, Richard Kilby, John Reynolds, Miles Smith, William Thorne. Second Cambridge Oxford company, so there was more than one company. John DePort, John Boyce, William Branthwaite, Andrew Downs, Jeremiah Radcliffe, Thomas Ravis, George Abbott, so on and so forth, right? And here was the Second Westminster Company as well. Sources at the bottom. You can go back and read this information for yourself. I'm giving you the information so you can go and study it and equip yourselves for all the scoffers. Additional contributors, Archbishop Richard Bancroft, he was a translation overseer. Thomas Bilson and Miles Smith was the committee of two. They were a set of revisers. John Boyd, Andrew Downs, John Harmer was a committee of revisers as well. Thomas Spark was one of the translators. John Speed, he did the genealogies and maps that you see inside the Bibles. Cornelius Boel, he was an artist and engraver. John Moore helped with the maps. Reynold Elstract was an engraver, which is, you know, when you look at the original King James Version Bible, you see the handcrafted things on it. They did those. And then Hugh Brofton was another one that dealt with genealogy. I'm not going to read all of these, but I'm just going to give you some credentials of some of these people. Thomas Bilson, a scholar, school administrator, and churchman. Thomas Bilson was described by historians and biographer Anthony A. Wood as so complete in divinity, so well skilled in languages, so read in the fathers and schoolmen, so judicious in making use of his readings, that at length he was found to be no longer a soldier but a commander-in-chief in the spiritual warfare. Another called him infinitely studious and industrious in poetry, in philosophy, in physics, and lastly, which his genius chiefly called him to, in divinity. Bilson was present at the Hampton Court Conference in January 1604 when the translation project began. It must have been enormously satisfying to have been a final reviewer of the masterpiece which had been created. So he was the final reviewer. He was also well studied in a number of things, so you can see that he had some intellect behind him. Miles Smith came into his position as a translator through much disciplined study over many years. It has been noted that from his youth, he constantly applied himself to reading the ancient classical authors in their own languages, and that Greek, Latin, Hebrew, Chaldaic, Syriac, and Arabic were almost as familiar to him as his native tongue, English. This man could speak, he was multilingual in the ancient languages, Hebrew, Chaldee, Aramaic, Greek, Syriac. These were all Middle Eastern languages, Near East languages. So he was one of the translators. So he could read Hebrew very well. We are told he had Hebrew at his finger end. Another called him a walking library. This man was full of intellect. Miles Smith, in his King James Bible preface, entitled the translators to the readers, entitled The Translators to the Readers, sheds great light on the attitude and approach the translators took on their work. He made it clear that the translators were greatly indebted to those who had gone before, that they were building upon their foundation, and that they were greatly indebted to those that went before, that they were building upon their foundation that went before us. As translators, they were attempting to make out of many good ones, good translations, one principal good one. He explained that they were greater in other men's eyes than their own, and they sought truth rather than their own praise. So they translated this Bible seeking truth. Miles Smith explained that as translators came together, they did not trust their own knowledge, but sought unto God for inspiration in the work, it being spiritual as well as intellectual endeavor, it being a spiritual as well as intellectual endeavor. He further explained that they didn't feel under any time constraints and were willing to revisit and revise which had previously been decided upon. In Miles Smith's word, to bring back the anvil that which we had hammered. They said, we wasn't trying to rush through this. We wanted this to be right. The words of Yashemaiah, we cut once, but we measured twice. They took their time with this. John Boyce was a reviser of the KJV Bible. He graduated with a master's and a doctorate in theology. He was a child prodigy. He read his Bible through by age 5. By age 6, he could write Hebrew with elegant hand. He learned Greek. He was given a fine grammar school education. Early in his university studies, his gift for languages was recognized by his teachers, and he was asked to provide appropriate Greek epistles for celebratory occasions. John had read the Bible and was conversant in Hebrew and Greek before he began his preparatory education at Headley Grammar School, located conveniently near Elsmith, Suffolk, where his father was a rector. So he was able to speak Hebrew fluently before he went to elementary school. This man had been speaking Hebrew from a baby, from a youth. I'm just trying to give you, look at the credentials of these people. Doctorates in theology. I know people feel a way about that, but that just means that they studied the Bible. And these people had a very proficient or advanced handle on the language. Graduated with a bachelor's in divinity, which was theology, a master's of the arts. His life was devoted to scholarship, especially Greek. This man was great in Greek. And he was described as the ablest Grecian of Christendom. This man, Andrew Downs, was more than proficient in Greek. John Harmar had a doctorate while being part of the council, member of the Second Oxford, responsible for translating the Gospels, the Acts of the Apostles, many of the earliest available scriptural texts providing a basics for the new translation was written in Greek. It was altogether fitting that Harmar, who had been called the most noble Latinist and Grecian, be a member of the team. So he was one that was known and respected for his knowledge of Latin and Greek. Francis Burleigh, known as an outstanding Hebrew scholar, and collaborated on the work with noted Orientalist and fellow translator William Bedwell. Richard Clerk, responsibility of translating the Old Testament from Genesis to 2 Kings. Each member of the company was a skilled scholar with special learning in ancient language, especially Hebrew. Richard Clerk was one of the ones that was specialized in Hebrew. Richard Clerk has spent many years as a teacher and scholar. He has been described as a learned Hebraist. These were just a few of the translator's credentials. Go back, read it, and research it on your own. These weren't just people, oh, it was poorly translated. I beg to differ, especially coming from people who barely know Hebrew, who barely know Greek, who are reading from translations that were translated from other English translations. It's a stretch. Now, here's the translating process. The translation was done by 6 committees, 3 for the Old Testament, 2 for the New Testament, 1 for the Apocrypha. Once the translation was complete, 2 members formed each committee. 2 members from each committee, that's a typo, I'm sorry, would review before sending to the next level of the final review. So everyone finished their translation. They then had 2 people that they trusted the most, who was the most learned in the language, said, hey, most learned in the Bible in the language, hey, you guys confer with one another the writings that we have brought together. After they finished, they send it to the next level. It says before sending to the next level for a final review. So they all they all translated it. Then they reviewed it. Then two of the leaders would review it. This is the second review. Then they send it up to the next level, people who weren't even here on the committee, specifically there to revise it, which is the third level to review it. It went through 3 revisions before it was passed on. Again, by scholars, by people who were doctorates in Hebrew, doctorates in Greek, doctorates in theology, understood the Bible. I'm just giving you the translation process, guys. It says the New Testament was translated from Greek, the Textus Receptus. We're going to talk about that in a little bit too. The Old Testament was translated from the Hebrew Masoretic text, the Aleppo and the Leningrad Codex. And you can find this information, Digital Commons, cedarville.edu. So, King James Version Bible was translated only from Greek. No, it wasn't. It was translated from the Masoretic text. And yes, you found the fragments of the Dead Sea Scrolls afterwards, but we're going to talk about that too. But the Masoretic text was more than adequate, more than sufficient for the King James Version Bible. At this time, the Masoretic text was the only full Hebrew text that we had. The Leningrad and the Aleppo Codex. We're going to talk about who translated the Masoretic text as well, so you're not like, oh, these was just some modern people. Nope, we're going to talk about that too. It's very important to understand. This is a lot to read. I'm going to just blast through it. The translation process. The new translation authorized by King James was done by 6 committees, 3 assigned to work on the Old Testament, 2 on the New Testament, 1 on the Apocrypha. Once the work of committees was completed, 2 members from each committee met for the final review before publication. The text was not really newly translated as claimed. Translators were told to follow the Bishop's Bible as much as possible and to be guided by the previous translation, the Tyndale and Coverdale, when they agreed better with the original text. So they were comparing the Old English text with the original text before they made their translation. And manuscripts. Supported by translations of available biblical manuscripts, the New Testament was translated using the Textus Receptus, a series of Greek texts. The Old Testament was the Masoretic text. The Old Testament, for the Old Testament, the Masoretic text was used, and for the Apocrypha, the Greek Septuagint text was used primarily. Since the translators were instructed to use the Bishop's Bible, 1568, as a guide, which was the revision of the Great Bible in 1539, which was a revision of the Matthew Bible in 1537, which was a revision of the Coverdale Bible that included the Tyndale's translation in 1535. The King James Version Bible included much of the wording of the Tyndale and Coverdale translation. That's how you get that Old English sound, because those were from the Tyndale and Coverdale Bible. Thus, the preface to the first edition says that the translators never sought to make a totally new translation, but to make out of many good ones, one principal good one. Interestingly enough, the King James Bible reflects the spoken English of the early 1500s rather than the early 1600s, because the early 1500s is what they were using in addition to the Hebraic text and the Greek text and the Latin text to translate this Bible, in which it was printed. Scholars agree that though the translation work was done by a committee, this large group of men with diverse resources produced a better version of the English Bible than had previously been available. It certainly was not perfect, nor was the English text inspired, but it was carefully done, faithful as possible to the available text and manuscripts, and has stood the test of time and study. Again, I know it's a lot to read. I know it's like, oh my God, it's so much. But understand what's being said here. It went through diligent and rigorous translation process. And just like it said in Sirach, there is like the Hebrew, the strength of the Hebrew, when you're translating it into even Greek, English, Spanish, whatever, it's not going to hold that same power. This is the point that they're making. Like, there are differences because there's certain words in Hebrew you don't have in English. You can't find this word in English. Masoretic text, the Aleppo Codex, the Leningrad Codices. Remember, people were always saying, oh, the the King James Version Bible was translated from Latin. It was translated from Greek. It wasn't even translated from the original text. No, we read that the King James Version Bible was translated from the Masoretic text, the Aleppo Codex, and Leningrad Codex, which was the available codices at the time. Now, let's talk about these texts. Are they useful? Are they worth it? Let's find out. Prior to the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls, the oldest Hebrew manuscript known to exist was the Masoretic text called the Aleppo Codex, which was written in 826 AD. This text was considered the most authoritative Hebrew manuscript, and all future editions are based on this text. Now, if you know anything, we're going to talk about the Masoretes. Don't worry about it. Another important Masoretic text was the Leningrad Codex, written in 1008 AD. So this came 150 years approximately after, actually closer to 200 years, 180, after the Aleppo. Both the Aleppo Codex and Leningrad Codex are called Ben Asher texts, as they both come from the Ben Asher tradition of the Masoretes. These are Jews that were heavy into the culture and the traditions. These people were the ones that wrote this text. Both of these texts are virtually identical, the only difference being paragraph location and vowel pointings, but the actual texts themselves are identical. Sources are at the bottom. Who are the Ben Asher Masoretes? a family that had been involved in creating and maintaining the Masorah, the collection of information and comment on the text of traditional Hebrew Bible by the Masoretes or Masoretic text. At least 5 or 6 generations, it should not be surprising to discover that many Masoretes so involved in the Masorah held Karaite beliefs. After all, it was the Karaites who placed such absolute reliance on the Torah text. It would be natural that they would devote their lives to studying every aspect of it. This is what a Karaite was. Karaites were considered outsiders in the Jewish world, so it was surprising that Ben Asher family's work of the Masoretic text would be accepted and held as such high esteem in the Jewish world. Karaites were individuals that they didn't believe in the Kabbalah, they didn't believe in the Talmud, they believed solely what was written in the Torah. That was it. And the Ben Asher family were a sect of the Karaites. And most Jewish people held to the Talmud and the Kabbalah, so Karaites were outcasted. Like, these dudes, they don't roll with what we roll with, right? But even though Karaites were outcasted and Ben Asher family were Karaites, all the Jews held in high esteem the Aleppo Codex and the Leningrad Codex, which were Masoretic texts written by the Ben Asher family, because they knew these people were solo scriptura. They focused solely on the scripture, solely on the Torah, translating solely based on that. They understood these people understood the culture. They understood that these people understood the language. They understood that these people knew what the hell they were doing in this Bible. And the King James Version Bible was translated by people who spoke Hebrew more than fluently, who had doctorates in these languages. And when they translated it into English, they used people that understood this Hebrew culture like they understood English. This Hebrew language, like they understood English. Remember that. But we're gonna keep going. The Masoretic text versus the Dead Sea Scrolls. Well, you look at the NIV, you look at the newer text, they started being translated from the Dead Sea Scrolls, which is not exactly true. And we're gonna talk about that in a minute. But this is one of the assertions that people place. There are other Bibles that came out that used the Dead Sea Scrolls to be translated. No, there's not. No, there's not. And Dead Sea Scrolls closer to the original Hebrew, and it's better than the Masoretic. No, it's not. No, it's not. Let's talk about it. Masoretic text versus the Dead Sea Scrolls. The Masoretic manuscripts among the Dead Sea Scrolls are astonishingly similar to the standard Hebrew text 1,000 years earlier. So, the Masoretic text manuscripts that they could find, the fragments of the Dead Sea Scrolls, they compared it to the Masoretic text. They said, damn, this is identical, basically the exact same, right? It says, the Masoretic manuscripts among the Dead Sea Scrolls are astonishingly similar to the standard Hebrew text 1,000 years later, proving the Jewish scribes were accurate in preserving and transmitting the Masoretic scriptures. The Masoretic Bible is, quote unquote, is one we've always had, and that's unlikely to change. In analyzing the various editions, at meaning level, most of the variants are not important, says Vanderkim. This is from Notre Dame University, the Dead Sea Scrolls, the major questions of the Old Testament. So the point that was being made was when you're reading the Masoretic text and you're reading the Dead Sea Scrolls, the understanding of what is going on in that text, the exact same, identical. There are no variations in the translation, meaning, oh, this says, XYZ over here, and this says ABC. No, they say the same thing. The word for word, verbatim, they may not write out the exact same way, but the meaning of what was written is the exact same. So to sit there and say, oh, this was better, no, it's not. They're identical. They're identical. And if you want to be technical, which we'll get into soon, NIV, RSV, ASV were translated from a Hebrew 4th edition, pretty much Masoretic text that was, revised in the 1900s, not the original that was written 1,000 years earlier. So these are newer versions, not the original Masoretic text anyways. They didn't get it from the Dead Sea Scrolls. I'm going to show you soon that they got it from revised versions of the Masoretic text, 900 years after that. So I'm still going to go closer to the original. If I'm talking about, trying to stick to the culture, as close to the culture as possible, I'm going to go with the original. So in conclusion, King James did not write the King James Version Bible, nor did he translate it. The council who translated the King James Version Bible were highly proficient in Greek, Hebrew, Latin, and Aramaic. The rules for translating the King James Version Bible was very stringent. King James wanted to translate the Bible from its original language and as accurately as possible. As accurately as possible. The Bible was translated from the Greek Textus Receptus, which everyone agrees on, the Masoretic text, which people omit, and the Greek Septuagint. People always say that the King James Version Bible was only translated from the Textus Receptus. That's not true. That's not true. And again, that is not true. As a matter of fact, in addition to the Masoretic text, in addition to the Greek Septuagint, I'm going to play a clip. One of the translators at the time from the documentary that you guys see, When God Spoke English, he also had a Syriac or Aramaic, I believe, Aramaic Bible. And so he was cross-referencing the Aramaic Bible as well. So Aramaic, Hebrew, Greek, Latin, English, all of these Bibles were used to translate the King James Version Bible. That's how diligent it was. When compared to the Bible was translated from the Textus Receptus, Masoretic text, and Greek Septuagint, and some Aramaic texts as well, scripts as well. And when compared to the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Masoretic texts are identical. So to make the argument, some were translated from the Dead Sea Scrolls, first of all, that's not true. Number two, it doesn't matter, because the Masoretic text is identical to the King James Version, to the Dead Sea Scrolls. Scholars agree, aside from the Geneva Bible, the King James Version Bible is the most accurately translated Bible of all early English Bibles. In conclusion, the King James Bible stands superior. This was the last bullet point. The King James Version Bible stands superior to newer texts, NSV, RSV, ESV, whatever other SV, because these texts have removed, this is the crazy part, have removed various Bible verses. I'm going to show that to you as well, because that's the importance of the revised Hebrew Masoretic text. That's the importance of the Greek text that they were translating. That's what it was. The Greek text that the newer version were translating from had omitted Bible verses. So when you look for it in the newer English translations, omitted Bible verses. So why am I going to read a Bible that don't even have all the Bible verses? In addition to the translations, the Hebrew translations that you gave us, they were not the original. King James Version Bible has the originals. And it has all of the verses. I'm going to show y'all something. Let's check for some missing verses. About to exit the PowerPoint. I want to minimize this. I'm going to try to make this fast. Is it this one? No, it's here. Pull that up as well. Now, a list of New Testament verses not included in modern English translations. NSV, ESV, RSV, ASV, so on and so forth. I'm going to give you a few of them because there's a number of them. Let's go to Matthew 17:21. Is Darash full of doo-doo? Is he lying? Let's find out. I'm going to minimize this. I forgot I had this up already. It's okay. We're going to do it like this. All right, Matthew 17:21 is where we're going to go to. Bible Gateway.
Book of Matthew, chapter 17.
No, you don't have to read it. Don't worry about it. I'm going to pull it up right here. Authorized. I'm drawing a blank. It's King James. Oh, here it is. King James Version Bible. So what was that? Matthew 17 to 21. Watch this. Matthew 17, 21. Howbeit this kind goeth out, but not by fasting and prayer. King James Version Bible, we see that, right? Watch this. Authorized King James, same thing. Now let's go to RSV and search. Oh, no valid results are found. What the heck? Okay. Surely the NIV will have it, right? Let's try the NIV. Search. 21. Nothing. Oh, wait. It just has an A right here. This is literally what it does. Go look at your NIV Bible. This verse is missing. ESV. Let's try ESV. English Standard Version. Boom. Gotta be here. Nope. No valid results are found. The newer version, by the modern English translations have omitted verses. Now you can do this on your own. I'm going to show it to you. Mark 7 and 16, Mark 9 and 44, 46, Mark 11, Luke 17. I'm just scroll. Romans 16, 1 John 5 and 7, Matthew 20 and 16. These verses are missing out of these Bibles. So why would we use these Bibles? Let me show you something else. Oh, I want you to hear this. Unmute the ox real quick, Yashan. I want to show the people this real quick point. Let me make sure I'm at the right spot. It's right here. We'll start it right here. It's talking about the King James Version Bible. When God Spoke English, that's the documentary. Yashan, unmute, please.
James encouraged rigorous scholarship. This is the library at Merton College, Oxford, where one of the translators, Henry Saville, worked. What I'm struck by is the thoroughness of these 17th century scholars. Now this, I think, is a grammar of Hebrew.
What you've done for me very helpfully, actually, is set this book down the wrong way. Even in the period, it was called the left-hand book, because you need to turn it that way and work for us, as it were, from back to front and from right to left when reading what is in this case a grammar of the Syriac or Chaldean Semitic language. And it's a grammar that would simply help scholars like Saville and the other translators understand those early Hebrew witnesses.
How good were they at it? I mean, how good was Saville's scholarship, say? Can one see anything?
This, in fact, if I could show you, is a very good example of some of the best evidence we have that Saville actually knew what he was reading, because you can see him making Hebrew or Chaldee, to be strict about it, annotations in the margin. So that really does show us that many of these men were, for the standards of their day, very much up to speed with Oriental languages, as they called them.
I don't think I've ever seen any evidence that is clearer than this of how careful they were. It is not a casual political project, this. This is a deeply scholarly enterprise.
Absolutely. And it's the common denominator that actually helps to create the umbrella under which James assembled a rather diverse group of people in terms of church politics.
So, I'm not sure why. I don't know if you guys were able to actually watch that, and I apologize if you were not. But again, you guys can look it up. It's called When God Spoke English. That's the name of the what's it called? That's the name of the documentary. Are you guys, real quick, are you guys able to see anything outside of the PowerPoint? Let me know so I can see if I can get this fixed. shucks. Okay, let me see if I can do this. Let's see if this helps. Might have to extend it. Can I escape? Yashawn, take it back to the PowerPoint real quick. I just want to see if they're able to see it. That's weird. There we go. All praises. Okay. So, to my point, I want to, oh crap, nope, wait, not that yet. That's some other information that I'm going to give you guys in 1 second. Here it is. So, Matthew 17 and 21, in addition to a number of other, let me go here real quick. I'm going to pull it up for you. Oh, crap. Here we go. Here are the different verses that are missing. 17:21, Matthew 18 and 11, Matthew 23:14, Mark 7 and 16. Go and research this on your own. All the newer Bibles are missing these translations. So why would we read those when they're missing them? Why would we read those if their Hebrew manuscripts, their Greek manuscripts are missing verses? Their Hebrew manuscripts are a copy of the original ones, which we actually translated from the KJV. Why would we use newer Bibles when you saw the diligence and how thorough the translation process was? You saw the credentials of these individuals. Just saying, right? Now watch this. I'm going to show you something else. I'm going to get to that in 1 second. Let's deal with this. No. This is the last thing I want to deal with. It's actually my favorite point. We'll deal with that last. Okay, let's go back here. Modern translations, ESV. The ESV is derived from the 1971 text edition of the RSV, or the Revised Standard Version. ESV Translation Committee members Wayne Grudem claims that approximately 8%, or about 60,000 words, of the 1971 RSV text being used to the ESV was revised as the first publication in 2001. Now, what was that thing that I wanted here? I think it's this. Click him up. Let's see if we can get him. Let's see if it's going to act right. Look like it's going to move slow. We don't need this anymore. Here we go. 9 things you should know about the ESV Bible. And again, you can look down here at the bottom of my PowerPoints and get the what do you call it? Get the sites and the sources. Last month's publisher and translator team that produced the English Standard Version announced the text of the ESV will remain unchanged for future editions, but after public debate about making the latest edition a permanent text, they announced this week, we have become convinced that the decision was a mistake. Here is what you need to know about the ESV, one of the most popular English translations. The idea of the ESV originated in the 1990s. The starting point of the ESV was the 1971 edition of the RSV. Each word of the text was also checked against the base of the Masoretic text, specifically the Biblia Hebraica second edition. This edition was in 1983, so it was revised. On the Greek text, 1993 edition, Greek New Testament, Novum Testimonium Graeci. It was a 15-member translation oversight. What else do we need to know about this? I guess that's all the important stuff. So, we see that it was translated from a revised version of the Hebrew text. We see that it was translated from a revised version of the what's that bad boy called? Of the Greek text. These Greek texts are the ones that are missing the Hebrew. I'm sorry, are missing the Bible verses, excuse me. I didn't need this, I'm sorry. Now, what was that? ESV. Now, the RSV, translated from the Nestle Aland United Bible Society text as opposed to the Textus Receptus, also known as the UBS. Here is the difference between those two Greek texts, Textus Receptus and the UBS. Let's see the difference between the two. So KJV was translated by Textus Receptus. The newer Bibles were translated by the UBS, the NAUBS, Nestle Allen United Bible Society. Important differences between Textus Receptus and Nestle Allen United Bible Society. The King James Bible was a translation of an edition of the Greek New Testament called the Textus Receptus. Most modern translations are based on the edition of the Nestle Allen United Bible Society, NAUBS. The differences between the two texts are many and important. Textus Receptus readings generally provide stronger doctrine. The following list shows some of the more doctrinally significant readings that are in the Textus Receptus, and in many cases, the Byzantine and Western as well, but they're missing in the NAUBS. So these are verses that are in Textus Receptus, but are missing in the other texts that the NIV, ESV, RSV was translated in. So in other words, all those modern English Bibles are missing these verses because the Greek text that they translated from was missing these verses. Matthew 1, 25, 5, 22, 5, 44, 6, 1, 6, 13, 9, 13, 30. These are all the verses that are missing in these modern English Bibles. Why would we be reading these Bibles as opposed to the KJV? I don't know. I don't know. I don't think I need this. Do I need this? Yada, yada. Oh, this is the important part. Okay, this is my last part. So, conclusion. The King James Version Bible was translated by a committee, a panel of individuals, went through rigorous revisions. It was translated by individuals who were doctorates, understood the Bible, understood the language, were devout to the Bible. It wasn't a situation where they were doing it for their own moral gains. They had a list of rules to make sure that there was no corruption or collusion that was created formed when translating the Bible. And it went through strong and rigorous textual criticism. They had Aramaic Bibles or text comparisons. Aramaic Bibles, Greek, Latin, Hebrew, the Masoretic text to be exact. And all of these people had been speaking Hebrew since they got potty trained. And all of these people were learned because they had degrees. Now y'all say, oh, it's the white man's education. Understood, but here's the thing. I tell people this all the time. You can't have a 1.0, 0.8 GPA, fail in the English class, and all of a sudden pick up a King James Version Bible and think you can read this and be an amazing scholar. You're going to misunderstand a lot of this shit if you don't understand punctuation, if you don't understand verb-noun agreement, if you don't understand what certain punctuations mean and what it denotes, you're not going to understand the Bible. These people understood these things in addition to being learned in the Bible, in addition to being learned in these languages. And all of these other versions are missing Bible verses that the King James Version Bible is not missing. This Bible is more than adequate. This Bible is more than apt. This is why we should be reading the King James Version Bible as opposed to all the other ones. This is important so you understand that the stuff that people are saying, King James was gay. Okay, go read the Basilicon Duran. You'll see that's a lie. King James wrote the Bible. You go, all of this information just proved that was a lie. King James was a white man. We finna deal with that too. It's the white man's book. We about to deal with that right now. This was convoluted. This is corrupt. The translators made a bunch of mistakes. Prove that was a lie. It was only translated into Greek. Lie. This is my last part. It's my favorite part. And I'm gonna let you draw your own conclusion of this. You'll see why. Take me to the thing, please. All right. I'm gonna deal with this part last. Here we go. Europe's Black Kings. This is from hbcuconnect.com. I had to search it. Here it is. I'm just reading it. Like I said, you're gonna come to your own conclusion. King James was a king of Great Britain and France and Ireland. King James was a black man of Moorish descent, and the King James Bible is named after King James I of England, who lived from June 19th, 1566 to March 27th, 1625. The established church was divided in this era. In 1603, King James called a conference in the Hampton Court to attempt to resolve these issues. I'll read the top again. King James was the king of Britain, France, and Ireland. King James was a black man of Moorish descent, and the King James Bible is named after King James I of England. I'm just reading. I am not going to put my intake on this. Here's another one from thepatriot.co.zw. King James was black, part 1. I'm only reading the first sentence because I don't feel like reading the whole thing. King James I of England was originally King James VI of Scotland. He was the son of a black father and a colored mother, both of royal blood. I'm just reading. King James was originally King James VI of Scotland. He was the son of a black father and colored mother, both of royal blood. We should not forget, however, I'm dropping down right here. We should not forget, however, that after Moors settled in Spain and southern Europe in 711 CE, significant numbers of black people found their way into northern European countries such as Scotland, Ireland, France, and Denmark. There's a really good book called Nature Knows No Color Line. Get that book. It talks about a lot of black nobility in Europe. So again, I'm just reading information. I'm not even gonna comment on this. Here's another one. Here's the website right here, www.englishmonarchs.co.uk. This is in the UK, Stewart_3 HTM, excuse me. The House of the Stewarts. This is King James' bloodline, right? Charles II. This was the grandson of King James. House of Stuart in orange. This is King James, Charles I, Charles II. This is who we're going to be talking about right now. Stuart family tree. Boom. Charles II. This is his grandson, and we just read that he was a black man, allegedly. Supposedly, I'm not going to say. But Charles's appearance was anything but English, with his sensuous curling mouth, dark complexion, black hair, and dark brown eyes. Dark complexion, black hair, dark brown eyes. He much resembled his Italian maternal grandmother, Mary de Medici, side of the family. Now, remember, when you read about the Sicilians, I'm sorry if you guys can't read this. Like I said, I have the articles. You guys can copy the links. The Sicilians were Italian, and they were black as well. Most of the English people at this time, the common people at this time, were white. There was a mixture of white and so-called black. But they said, the Sicilians, the Romans at this time, were of darker complexion. So, during his escape after the Battle of Worcester, he was referred to as a tall black man in parliamentary wanted posters. One of his nicknames acquired was the Black Boy. His height was 6'2", probably inherited from his Danish paternal grandmother. Anne of Denmark also set him up from the contemporaries in a time when the average Englishman was smaller than him today. I thought I had crap. I don't have it. Man, I don't have it. It's okay. One of the relatives, I believe it was the cousin of King James, and I'm going to go back and verify this. She was referred to as olive skin colored. Olives are 3 colors, like a crimson reddish color. There's a black olive, and there's a green olive. I'll let you draw your own conclusion from that. All praise to the Most High. We've made good time. I wasn't sure how long this was going to go. I wanted to make sure that I gave you as much information as physically possible, because when people ask, why are you reading the King James Version Bible? Because it's the best translated version. And they come to oppose that. A lot of our people are not equipped to deal with that. Now, Lord willing, you are equipped to deal with that. Why don't you read the NIV? Why don't you read this book? You know what? I don't know. We've just been reading the King James Version Bible. You have to know why you do what you do. You can't just be doing this just because. You have to know why it is you do what you do. I teach brothers, we teach rather, the brothers who help build up these men. We teach brothers, if you're doing something, you need to know why. Why do you keep the Sabbath from Friday sundown to Saturday sundown? Oh, it's just what we do. No, you need to know why. Here's a breakdown, a full understanding. Why do you keep the new moon? What's the purpose of the new moon? Why do you keep it on this day when the moon looks like this? Oh, it's just what we... No, you need to understand that. Why do you read the King James Version Bible instead of the RSV, the ESV, the NIV, the GNT, the NLT? Now you know why. When people are saying, oh, it was only translated from Greek, now you know that's a lie. Oh, it wasn't translated in Hebrew. Now you know that was a lie. There was better translations. Now you know that's a lie. Know why it is you do what you do. I pray to the Most High that this lesson was edifying. I pray to the Most High that it was full of information that you can take, place it in your arsenal when you breaking down people. And there's a white man's book. Okay, again, I let you draw your own conclusion from the information that I gave. It's the white man's book. You know? The proof says it here. They pull up pictures, say, look, look, all of Europe was, no, they weren't. You don't know European history. Now you understand all of the scoffing points that people, he's the white man, he was a homosexual, it was corrupt, there's better translations, it wasn't translated from the original language. Y'all can bust that wide open. All praise to the Most High. I pray that you guys took notes. If you didn't, go back and watch it again. It's a lot of information to ingest, I know, but I wanted to be as thorough as I could possibly be so you guys understand why it is you do what you do. Real quick, because that concludes the lesson. Some of my brothers is getting on me, talking about I done said in conclusion a number of times, but you know it get like that sometimes. I just got to make sure that I'm thorough. Okay, so the lesson is over. All praise to the Most High. I just want to give you the quick rundown. Mondays, every first Monday, Q&A. Every second and fourth Monday, our Spanish lessons, Los Discípulos de las Palabras. Tune in to those classes, all of the Spanish speakers. Q&A. If you got any question regarding anything, we are here to help you. We're here to save souls. We're here to answer those questions. We don't say we know everything, and the things that we don't know, we'll do our best to try to get you the answer. We're not too prideful to start making up stuff. We're not going to do that. Every Tuesday is Bible Basics. Bible Basics, basic doctrine, basic understandings, the do's and don'ts. This is to help build up your to help build up your foundation for your salvation. Wednesday, world history, also basic, but to give you a basic understanding of the Bible, the events that were going on around that time, the historical points in the Bible, Kings, Chronicles, Judges, who was ruling in these times, Babylonian captivity, so on and so forth. So you understand what's going on in this Bible, so you can combat all of the foolishness when people are saying, oh, the Bible's fake, you can't find this information, blah, blah, blah. Yes, you can. Second and third Thursday, stick to the script. Today was in the classroom. Sometimes we do Chopper City where we cutting up false doctrine. It's always something off the script. We just decide, hey, we're going to give the people something that we feel will be beneficial to them. Friday, that's Room 144. Room 144, led by our lead apostle, Yashamai, or Ash, or Bishop Izar, or Bishop Banaya. Always some fire. It could be doctrinal. It could be spiritual. It could be character building, but you know it's going to be some heat. Saturday, Feed the Sheep, Bishop Tazayawan. Again, it could be doctrinal. It could be building up. How do we build up the children? How do we build up our spirit? How do we break down certain doctrines, whatever the case is, but you know it's going to be some heat. Like the channel. Subscribe to the YouTube. Share the content. This is for you guys. We trying to save souls. We trying to build our people's spirit up. We're trying to push the ministry. We're trying to wake the people up. If you haven't yet, contribute to our booster club. It helps the ministry for us to go out and travel and give this word. It allows us to be able to go overseas, go to the islands, take a cross-country tour to build up men, to continue to wake up the lost sheep of the house of Israel. If you believe in what we do, if you believe in this word, if you believe in the things that you're learning here, share the content, subscribe to the channel, contribute to the booster club. Stay in tune with what it is that we have going on. Stick to the script. In the classroom, another segment. Brother Darash, Brother Yaquataza, we signing out. Shalom.
It's meant, y'all.